Hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's lecture on mental health risk of social media use. Today's lecture is lecture 4 of module 12. I am Amandeep Saikia and I am a clinical psychologist and your instructor for today's lecture. So we all know, and I have also emphasized in my previous lectures about how important social media is. Social media's importance in our everyday life. So we have seen how social media helps us to connect in an amazing way in our day-to-day life, but it also comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of risks, and today's lecture will be focusing on that. We'll be understanding about how social media has an impact on our mental health, specifically anxiety, depression, loneliness, and certain other mental health conditions. So now let us look at the objectives, what we'll be covering in today's lecture. So this lecture aims to equip you with a clear understanding of how social media can affect mental health, particularly for young people. First, we'll be exploring how excessive use is linked to anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Then we will be identifying specific stressors and also digital fatigue. Finally, we'll be examining social comparison and cyberbullying. So by the end of the lecture, you will also learn few strategies which will help you to use social media in a mindful way. So to understand why this matters, let us look at the scale of social media use in today's life. So before we begin, I just have a question for you. So raise your hand if you have checked your phone or checked your social media today. So if you have raised your hand, how many hours did you spend, or if how many hours in a week on an average you spend with social media? So if your answer is that it's a little more than 2 hours or 3 hours, then it's something that you should be focusing on and listening to what I'm talking about. So if we look at the statistics, so as of 2025, it is seen that around 4.9 billion people use social media globally. So this is, over half the world's population. And it's also seen that teens are especially active. If you look at the hours that they, spend on an average, it is seen that they spend around 3 to 5 hours daily. And especially on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Snapchat. So we have to understand that social media is not just a tool, but it is a daily environment which shapes in a way, how we feel, what we think, and mostly the younger generations. So over the years, as I have told you, how the usage has increased, right? So many researchers have shown that it's a lot more than we think it is. So studies from 2020 to 25 gives us fresh insights into risks like anxiety and depression. So whether you are a student, a parent, a teacher, you all have a role to understand about how this social media is affecting our daily lives, positive way and especially in a negative way, so that we can take informed choices when it is needed. Now let us start with our first subtopic, that is how excessive use impacts mental health. So when we are talking about excessive use, that means that one is using social media for at least more than 3 hours. And it is mostly for non-work purposes. So this is seen, mostly around teenagers and young adults, that they use social media mostly for non-work purposes, just for entertainment. So research also shows clear link to anxiety, depression, and loneliness, which we'll be breaking down in a while. So while we are talking about how negative effect the social media has, our goal is not to demonize using social media. Our goal is not to demonize social media, but to make informed choices. So just think about your own habits. So do you ever feel that when you are using social media, when you are holding your phone, opening a browser, scrolling down Instagram or Facebook, you feel exhausted after a while, or you feel very negative in some way? So if your answer is yes, that means that social media is having a negative effect on your mental health. Now let us understand, and we'll start with anxiety. So, seen that heavy social media use is strongly linked to anxiety, often driven by triggers like constant notifications and fear of missing out, in short, also called as the FOMO. So, a research in 2024 showed that around 1632 young adults found that digital technology, including social media, significantly increased their anxiety symptoms. So, this shows that anxiety levels spike. So, the more you use social media, the more your anxiety level tends to rise. So, now let us look at why this is happening. So, what are the different mechanisms of this? So, there are several mechanisms that drive this anxiety. So, first, as you can see in the slide, that is overstimulation. So, when you're scrolling through fast paced feeds, you're just scrolling through the reels, that tends to overwhelm the brain because there's so much of rapid information that is coming. The second is that there is a pressure to stay on at all times. There's a pressure to respond to messages the moment it comes, and if you are not, then you are being judged. Then the third is late night scrolling, that is leading to sleep disruption. So as we all know that, when we are looking at the screen before sleep, so as you are going through different reels, it is giving you this, it is bombarding you with lots of information. So when that information overload is happening, your mind is unable to relax, as well as this exposure to blue light that I had highlighted in my previous lectures as well. So because of this, your brain is getting activated, and also it is affecting your circadian rhythm. So the sleep wake cycle is getting affected. As a result, you will start having, getting sleep disturbances over time. So if somebody is having sleep disturbance, it also fuels anxiety. So just imagine that you were studying and you tend to get around 50 notification, this just sound coming. So how will you feel? So will you be able to focus? I don't think so, right? So we have to see that how it is affecting not just our sleep but also our daily functioning, daily activities that we are trying to do. Then the last is, as you can see, chronic activation. So prolonged exposure to the stressors, that is even a notification that is coming, the sound of it, or you are expecting a mail or a message from your superior, so even that can be a stressor for you. So when there is a prolonged exposure to these stressors, it can lead to this persistent anxiety state. So even when you go offline, the state of anxiety still continues for a long time. Now let us explore the link to depression. So studies have shown, especially the study that was done in 2025, the Pew Research, it shows that around 48% of teens, they feel worse after heavy social media use, which is up from 32% in 2022. So from 32% to 48% over the span of 3 years is a lot to tell. So when we are talking about feeling worse, it is not just about feeling sad. So it is a measurable increase in the depressive symptoms. So when we are talking about depression, we should not get confused with sadness, because when some incident happens and we feel sad, it tends to go away. But with depression, what happens is, it's a consistent, persistent feeling of low mood, sadness. Other symptoms also comes with that. So it is seen that over the years, it's seen that with increased social media use, it tends to make people more prone to depressive symptoms. So poor sleep from late night use or exposure to negative content. When we are constantly looking at different information online, be it reels or stories, we do not have a control over what comes to us most of the time. And many a times what happens is we tend to get exposed to negative content. And because of the nature of the information, sometimes we get glued to the screen and we keep watching those negative content, which has an effect on our mental health, leading to anxiety or depression. Apart from that, seeking validation. So if you are a part of some social media group, or you have an account, you are uploading some photo or some content or a write up, So we tend to seek validation. So that also has an impact on the depression or the anxiety that one may be going through. So now let us look at what really drives this. So one big driver is the exposure to curated lifestyles. You'll see online that people are putting their perfect vacations, their perfect bodies or careers that tend to feel unattainable. So as a result, what happens is it tends to lower our self-esteem. Another is reduced real world interaction. So because you are constantly exposed to online mode, you may be having, just engaging in some gaming or going through reels. So we tend to get so, especially for people who are kind of addicted to social media, we tend to ignore or avoid real world connection, which in a way, affects our social connection or leads to isolation. So finally, seeking likes, as I said, it tends to create a feedback loop where, our self-worth is tied to online approval. So if somebody is giving us likes or positive comments, we'll feel, good. Our self-worth will increase. But if we are getting negative comments, then it will lead to negative effect. So for example, like think of a teenager who, tends to feel inadequate after seeing a flawless influencer post, and they tend to compare themselves, and whatever they see, when they see themselves in the mirror, they have this negative sense of image, self image. Now let us look at loneliness. So social media promises connection, right? You'll meet a lot of people, but you'll often see that heavy users, they tend to feel more isolated. So studies have also shown higher loneliness scores among those spending excessive time online. So if I were to ask you, like, have you ever felt more alone after online, spending time online, despite having thousands of friends? So many times what happens, you may have a lot of followers, like in thousands maybe, but when you actually need a friend or you need to talk to somebody, you will not find anyone. So when we are talking about online life or finding social connections online, so these online interactions are often very shallow. So the likes and the emojis most often used, like even in WhatsApp, if you see that if you're talking to someone, you will not actually have a proper conversation as compared to real life conversation, because mostly in today's generation they'll be using short words or emojis or GIFs to express themselves. So this limits this online communication. So a 2024 study, they tried to link this internet overuse to social isolation, especially in the youth. So it was found that spending hours online, it cuts into the time for real world relationships, something like hanging out with your friends or family. So the next, we will be looking at the social media stressors. So social media isn't just about fun videos. So it can also create hidden stress. So the constant notifications, they demand our attention. Every time the notification is coming, you will have to check it out. That is what is happening today. So this information overload, it comes from these endless feeds. So the negative news or this doom scrolling, they tend to spike the stress levels. And these symbolize the pressures that we are facing in our day-to-day life. So if you may also connect to this, that when you hear your phone ringing or you hear your phone buzzing or any kind of sound coming out from your phone, you just have this sudden spike in your stress levels as well. So now let us look at these stressors in a bit more detail. As you can see in this table, there are different types of stressors. So the first is time pressure. So when we are looking at time pressure, it is more about feeling that you're going behind some kind of trend, you're missing out on that, and then there is a pressure to post regularly. So what and how it impacts is that it will lead to anxiety, FOMO, or reduced productivity. The second is social obligations. So when you're having a lot of friends online, so you will receive a lot of messages or some kind of call. So there is a social pressure to respond to these DMs, and if not, you will tend to feel guilty. You may also feel very mentally exhausted, so it may lead to this sense of overwhelm or even social fatigue. So anytime you are receiving some comment, any tags you are receiving, there is, especially if it is coming from a family or a friend, you may have this pressure to respond to that. The third is content overload. So you are getting this endless viral videos online, a lot of information, easy access to information. There is constant news cycles, and as you know, this algorithm driven content. So anytime you are looking at some video, this algorithm will somehow know, and they will keep suggesting you such kind of videos. So if you tend to watch more of certain kind of videos, negative content, you will be more prone to receiving such kind of content anytime you open your app. Similarly, if you're watching more positive, so you will get similar. So it's very important that you are aware of what content you are watching. The last is performance pressure. So, as I said earlier, that being a part of some social media, or having some channel or account, uh, it puts a pressure for you to post content which is like worthy. Just trying to manage this follower count, that you may know how your followers increase over time, or there is a pressure to increase the likes of your photos or videos. So this leads to perfectionism and self-criticism. So which of the stressors that I discuss right now out of the four you experience most frequently? So are there any others that affect you? So if you have an answer, maybe you could put it up in the discussion forum in your mail. So now let us understand digital fatigue. So when we are talking about digital fatigue, so this is, to understand it better, it is a state of mental exhaustion from too much screen time. So when we are talking about digital fatigue, it is not just tiredness, but it is cognitive overload, irritability, and even burnout. So mostly you will see that teens and young adults are mostly hit hard in this area. And this is mostly happening because they are, often glued to the screens. So now just think of your brain like a battery. So if you are, suppose the battery is not charged well at appropriate time, what will happen? It will drain, and you cannot, switch it on or use it anymore. Similarly, our brain. So if you do not give, appropriate breaks to your brain, just like the battery, it will be non-functional, it will be completely exhausted. So when you are using this social media, it is very important that you charge your mind, you take appropriate breaks in between your work, in between the usage of social media especially. Now let us look at the effects of digital fatigue. So digital fatigue, too much of social media usage, it leads to a cognitive impairment. It reduces your ability to focus. It affects your decision making abilities, and also over time your creative thinking capacity. It leads to certain physical symptoms like headache, eye strain, neck pain, and also disrupted sleep patterns, as discussed earlier. Then we have the social consequences that I mentioned, where you are withdrawing yourself from in-person interactions. And then we also have certain emotional effects, like there is increased irritability over time, there is emotional numbness and reduced empathy. And the last and foremost, especially for students, is academic impact. So when we are, you are studying, you are a student, you are required to, study well and being able to focus and concentrate. But the more you are spending time with social media, and like I was telling about reels, where, you can easily, scroll down when you're getting bored of a particular reel, which is mostly of 30 seconds or 1 minute. So you know that every time you are getting bored of a particular reel, or it is not of your interest, you can just swipe. So what happens is that your attention span is reducing over time. So when you are trying to study and when you are reading from your book, maybe you cannot swipe just like how you did for the reel. So if you're getting bored of a particular paragraph in your book, you still have to, go through with it. But what happens is that because you have already exposed your mind, your brain to this social media, and this reduced attention span has happened, you will start having effect on this academics as well. You will not be able to focus better. You will have concentration problem. You will not be able to read for more than 10-15 minutes. And this is something I'm saying because, as I said, that I'm a clinical psychologist. I tend to meet a lot of people, a lot of students, young adults, teenagers with this problem. So the main thing is looking at how many hours you are spending with social media, what kind of content you are looking at, and how you are being aware of that. That is the most important thing about, before we get into solving these problems, you have to be aware of that. Now let us look at the stressors and fatigue outcome. So when we are talking about stressors and fatigue, they tend to create a vicious cycle. So as I told about disrupted sleep, lowering your productivity, and also increasing the risk of anxiety and depression. So they can also lead to unhealthy coping method. So many times, when we are going through stress, we have different way of dealing with them, right? So if you are stressed out, what do you generally do? Maybe you would be going for a walk, doing some exercise, or talking to your family members or your friends. But what will happen if you are spending most of your time with social media? So as I said, already your social exposure is getting affected. You've started to isolate yourself. So the next time you are going through stress, you know that rather than finding a friend, I rather look at what I have in my phone. This quick access to some fun content may make me feel relieved. So with that intention, you tend to scroll more over this phone and more of reels or videos, which is not a positive kind of coping method. So when we are talking about coping mechanisms, there is a positive coping method and then there is a negative coping method. So this constant phone use to deal with your stress is kind of a negative coping method. Now let us look at social comparison. So social comparison happens when we are measuring ourselves against others curated feed or what they're putting up online, like I said. So this will lead to envy and feelings of inadequacy, especially among teenagers. And as you can see in the slide, and I had also mentioned in my previous lectures about how we tend to have this upward comparison where we are comparing ourselves with someone who is very successful or very attractive. Then there is also this quantified validation. The more likes, the more comments, the more validated we feel. So it tends to worsen depression, it tends to increase our anxiety, it can lead to body image concerns and also reduce our self-esteem. So a research in 2023 was conducted that showed that college students found that frequency of social comparison on social media was significantly associated with anxiety symptoms. Then we come to cyberbullying. So cyberbullying is more about when you use digital platforms to intentionally and repeatedly harm, harass or humiliate others. So the most common forms are when one is spreading rumors or are posting offensive or threatening comments, or they're sharing embarrassing images without consent, or some kind of exclusion, or creating a fake profile to harass others. So victims are mostly, feeling trapped because, as compared to, bullying when it is done face to face, online bullying does not give a safe space for the person. It can happen anywhere, anytime. So the person is, receiving negative comments within minutes, like thousands of negative comment, and this has a more negative effect on the mental health of young adults or the adolescents. So as you can see the prevalence, it affects around 10 to 15% of teens annually, and it is mostly underreported because of the shame. And most of the time, as you can see, 60% of the time the victims know their bullies. So of course cyberbullying has an effect on the mental health. So many researchers show that cyberbullying victims experience more severe psychological effect than traditional bullying. So as I said, that it is mostly happening because of this 24/7 harassment that is online. Anytime anybody can have this access, and the content that is put online, in case somebody has uploaded an image, becomes permanent and is leading to shame for lifetime. So that's something similar with harassment as well. 1 in 3 teens, they report experiencing cyberbullying, with rates increasing 40% since 2019. So cyberbullying victims, they show significant higher rates of depression, anxiety and suicidal ideation, something which is very concerning because, as I said, it is increasing over the years. So it's very important that we work on that so that we can help those who are actually facing this problem and they do not shy away but come out and share with everyone. So now let us look at some of the strategies for healthy social media use. These are 3 very important techniques. So the first is setting boundaries. So try to limit usage of your phone or social media to 1 to 2 hours daily. Try to have some app that can remind you of the use. And the third is where you're creating the phone free zones or even time. So setting a time that, okay, this time of my day I will not be using my phone, or I will just use for these many hours, or if I'm using, I will not use it while I'm having my meal or before my sleep. The second is curate mindfully. So try to follow those accounts which are really inspiring and unfollow those which can have a negative effect on you. The third is practicing digital detox. So try to schedule regular breaks in just being away from your devices, especially like maybe you could do it on a weekend, or setting a time, evening time I will not do it. Then replace scrolling with offline activities. So as I said, that the more you are online, the more social connections or leisure activities are ignored. So try to minimize this and get into offline activities like walking mindfully, spending time with your family, your friends, and just getting into hobbies that you once liked. And researchers have also shown that someone with mild to moderate depression or anxiety, they do not need to go and take medication from a psychiatrist. Rather, if they spend more time with offline activities, they can get better. So imagine that you are going through some kind of anxiety or depressive symptoms because of social media use. Suppose you cut it off, so you know that you will get better. And researchers have also shown that as well, which I'll be talking about in a while. So as I said, this research has shown that even if you apply just one strategy out of what I discussed, it tends to reduce anxiety symptoms by 25% within 2 weeks. And of course, it also leads to other positive effects. Then we have these protective factors. So it's important that we all are having this digital literacy, knowing how algorithms work, how contents are trying to manipulate us. Then trying to mindfully use this, as I already said. Then the third is having a social support which is offline. So when you're having strong social connections offline, it can also buffer against these negative online experiences. So what these protective factors show is that it's not necessary that we should stop using this social media, but how we use the social media, that is more important. Because of course in today's world it is not possible that you stop using your phone or your laptops, but how you use it, that will really have an effect, a positive effect on your mental health. So we have come towards the end of today's lecture. So few key takeaways from today's lecture is that we understood about how social media is having a negative effect, leading to certain mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, loneliness. We looked at cyberbullying. So mostly how the mental health part is getting affected, and we spoke about researches that has shown that over the years increased use of social media has led to increase in mental health condition, which is very concerning. We looked at certain strategies that can help you to deal with the social media use, the healthy usage. Then we looked at certain protective factors that told us about how you can literate yourself, and not just on an individual level, but I think as a society, the institutions, schools or colleges, these can start implementing these techniques of teaching their students to literate themselves about digital mediums. So with this, I come to the end of our lecture today. Thank you so much for attending, and the next lecture will be talking about the techniques in which you can, the healthy ways in which you can use social media, which will be taken by Oin Mebang ma'am. Thank you so much. Bye.